The Fourth Political Theory by Alexander Dugin. 14. Against the Postmodern World. The Evil of Unipolarity. The current world is unipolar, with the global West at its center and with the United States at its core. This kind of unipolarity has geopolitical and ideological characteristics. Geopolitically, it is the strategic dominance of the Earth by the North American hyperpower and the effort of Washington to organize the balance of forces on the planet in such a manner as to be able to rule the whole world in accordance with its own national imperialistic interests. It is bad because it deprives other states and nations of their real sovereignty. When there is only one power which decides who is right and who is wrong, and who should be punished and who not, we have a form of global dictatorship. This is not acceptable. Therefore, we should fight against it. If someone deprives us of our freedom, we have to react. And we will react. The American empire should be destroyed. And at one point, it will be. Ideologically, unipolarity is based on modernist and postmodernist values that are openly anti-traditional ones. I share the vision of René Guénon and Julius Evola, who considered modernity and its ideological basis, bracket, individualism, liberal democracy, capitalism, consumerism, and so on, close bracket, to be the cause of the future catastrophe of humanity, and the global domination of the Western lifestyle as the reason for the final degradation of the Earth. The West is approaching its terminus, and we should not let it drag all the rest of us down into the abyss with it. Spiritually, globalization is the creation of a grand parody, the kingdom of the Antichrist. And the United States is the center of its expansion. American values pretend to be, quote, universal ones. In reality, it is a new form of ideological aggression against the multiplicity of cultures and traditions still existing in the rest of the world. I am resolutely against Western values, which are essentially modernist and postmodernist, and which are promulgated by the United States by force of arms or by obtrusion, bracket, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and perhaps soon Syria and Iran, close bracket. Therefore, all traditionalists should be against the West and globalization, as well as against the imperialist politics of the United States. It is the only logical and consequent position. So traditionalists and partisans of traditional principles and values should oppose the West and defend the rest, if the rest show signs of the conservation of tradition, whether in part or in its entirety. There can be and there really exist people in the West and even in the United States of America itself who do not agree with the present state of affairs and do not approve of modernity and postmodernity. They are the defenders of the spiritual traditions of the pre-modern West. They should be with us in our common struggle. They should take part in our revolt against the modern and postmodern worlds. We would fight together against the common enemy. Another question is the structure of a possible anti-globalist and anti-imperialist front and its participants. I think that we should include in it all forces that struggle against the West, the United States, against liberal democracy, and against modernity and postmodernity. The common enemy is the necessary instance for all kinds of political alliances. This means Muslims and Christians, Russians and Chinese, both leftists and rightists, the Hindus and the Jews who challenge the present state of affairs, globalization, and American imperialism. They are thus all virtually friends and allies. Let our ideals be different, but we have in common one very strong feature: hatred of the present social reality. Our ideals that differ are potential ones, bracket, in potentia, but the challenge we are dealing with is actual, bracket, in actu. That is the basis for a new alliance. All who share a negative analysis of globalization, westernization, and postmodernization should coordinate their effort in the creation of a new strategy of resistance to the omnipresent evil. And we can find common allies even within the United States as well, among those who choose the path of tradition over the present decadence. Towards the fourth political theory. At this point, we should raise a very important question. What kind of ideology should we use in our opposition to globalization and its liberal democratic, capitalist, and modernist (postmodernist) principles? I believe that all previous anti-liberal ideologies (communism, socialism, and fascism) are no longer relevant. They tried to fight liberal capitalism, and they failed. This is partly because, at the end of time, it is evil that prevails, and partly because of their inner contradictions and limitations. So it is time to begin a deep revision of the illiberal ideologies of the past. What are their positive sides? Their positive side is the very fact that they were anti-capitalist and anti-liberal, as well as anti-cosmopolitan and anti-individualist. These features should be accepted and integrated into a future ideology. But communist doctrine itself is modern, atheist, materialist, and cosmopolitan. That should be thrown out. On the other hand, communism's social solidarity, social justice, socialism, and general holistic attitude to society are good in and of themselves. So we need to separate out the materialist and modernist aspects of communism and reject them, while preserving and embracing its social and holistic aspects. As for the theories of the Third Way, which were dear, up to a certain point, to some traditionalists such as Julius Evola, there were many unacceptable elements, foremost among these being racism, xenophobia, and chauvinism. These are not only moral failures, but are theoretically and anthropologically inconsistent attitudes. Differences between ethnicities do not equate to superiority or inferiority. The differences should be accepted and affirmed without any racist sentiments or consideration. There is no common or universal measure to judge different ethnic groups. When one society tries to judge another, it applies its own criteria, and so commits intellectual violence. This ethnocentric attitude is precisely the crime of globalization and westernization, as well as of American imperialism. If we free socialism from its materialist, atheistic, and modernist features, and if we reject the racist and narrow nationalistic aspects of the Third Way doctrines, we arrive at a completely new kind of political ideology. We call it the fourth political theory, or 4PT, the first being liberalism, that we essentially challenge, the second being the classical form of communism, the third being National Socialism and fascism. Its elaboration starts from the point of intersection between different anti-liberal political theories of the past, namely communism and the Third Way theories, So we arrive at National Bolshevism, which represents socialism without materialism, atheism, progressivism, and modernism, as well as the modified Third Way theories. But that is only the first step. The mechanical addition of deeply revised versions of the anti-liberal ideologies of the past will not give us a final result. It is only a first approximation and preliminary approach. We must go further and make an appeal to tradition and to pre-modern sources of inspiration. There we have the Platonic ideal, medieval hierarchical society, and theological visions of the normative social and political system, Christian, Islamic, Buddhist, Jewish, or Hindu, These pre-modern sources are a very important development for the National Bolshevism synthesis. Therefore, we need to find a new name for this kind of ideology, and fourth political theory is quite appropriate. It does not tell us what this theory is, but rather what it is not. So it is a kind of invitation and appeal, rather than dogma. Politically, we have here an interesting basis for the conscious cooperation of the radical left-wingers and the new right, as well as with religious and other anti-modern movements, such as the ecologists and green theorists, for example. The only thing that we insist on in creating such a pact of cooperation is to put aside anti-communist as well as anti-fascist prejudices. These prejudices are the instruments in the hands of liberals and globalists with which they keep their enemies divided. So we should strongly reject anti-communism as well as anti-fascism. Both of them are counter-revolutionary tools in the hands of the global liberal elite. At the same time, we should strongly oppose any kind of confrontation between the various religious beliefs, Muslims against Christians, and Jews against Muslims, the Muslims against the Hindus, and so on. The interconfessional wars and tensions work for the cause of the kingdom of the Antichrist, who tries to divide all the traditional religions in order to impose its own pseudo-religion, the eschatological parody. So we need to unite the right, the left, and the world's traditional religions in a common struggle against the common enemy. Social justice, national sovereignty, and traditional values are the three main principles of the fourth political theory. It is not easy to put together such a varied alliance, but we must try if we want to overcome the foe. In France, there is a saying coined by Alain Sorel, "La droite valeur et la gauche de trve." In Italian it goes, "La destra sociale et la sinistra identitaria." How exactly it should sound in English, we will see later. We could go further and try to define the subject, the actor of the fourth political theory. In the case of communism, the central subject was class. In the case of the third way movements, the central subject was either the race or the nation. In the case of religions, it is the community of the faithful. How could the fourth political theory deal with this diversity and the divergence of subjects? We propose, as a suggestion, that the main subject of the fourth political theory can be found in the Heideggerian concept of Dasein. It is a concrete but extremely profound instance that could be the common denominator for the further ontological development of the fourth political theory. What is crucial for consideration is the authenticity or non-authenticity of the existence of Dasein. The fourth political theory insists on the authenticity of existence, so it is the antithesis to any kind of alienation, social, economic, national, religious, or metaphysical. But Dasein is a concrete instance. Every individual and every culture possesses their own Dasein. They differ between each other, but they are always present. Accepting Dasein as the subject of the fourth political theory, we should progress towards the elaboration of a common strategy in the process of the creation of a future that fits to our demands and our visions. Such values as social justice, national sovereignty, and traditional spirituality can serve us as the foundation. I sincerely believe that the fourth political theory and its secondary variations, National Bolshevism and Eurasianism, can be of great use for our peoples, our countries, and our civilizations. The key manager of differences is multipolarity in all senses: geopolitical, cultural, axiological, economic, and so on. The important concept of nous, intellect, developed by the Greek philosopher Plotinus, corresponds to our ideal. The intellect is one and multiple at the same time because it has multiple differences in itself. It is not uniform or an amalgam, but taken as such with many parts, and with all their distinct particularities. The future world should be noetic, in some way, characterized by multiplicity. Diversity should be taken as its richness and its treasure, and not as a reason for inevitable conflict. Many civilizations, many poles, many centers, many sets of values on one planet and in one humanity. Many worlds. But there are some who think otherwise. who are aligned against such a project? Those who want to impose uniformity, the one (American) way of life, one world. And their methods are force, temptation, and persuasion. They are against multipolarity. So, they are against us.